Hey, welcome. It's Lara here with your weekly Witchy Wednesday astrology forecast. This one is for the week of November 20th to 26th, 2019. So it's all about Sagittarius. We've still got the Scorpio, energy that's going on, but we are really moving into Sag energy. And there's a couple of pretty significant things that are happening this week to hearken that stage in. So, but before I get there, let's talk about where the moon is at. So today, as I'm recording this, the moon's in Virgo. We may feel a little bit like, scrubbing and polishing and cleaning and decluttering and those kinds of things. We may want to pay attention to our health a little more. We may be taking care of some details and doing a little research. And we may also find ourselves being a little bit critical or a little hyper focused on the faults. And that might include our own faults, right? There's that notion of really self criticism with Virgo as well. So that's where the moon is at today. And then it's moving into Libra tomorrow and Scorpio Sunday. And then Sagittarius on Tuesday, when we will have the last new moon of the year, which is new moon in Sagittarius, right? This is the last new moon before we have an eclipse, a solar eclipse happening at the end of December. So on the 26th. But we'll talk about that at a later date. So that's where the moon is at. And if you want to get more acquainted with the moon and how she impacts us down here on earth, right, on the day to day, and how we can harness her energies and her natural rhythms, then please do go download a free guide that I made for you. It's called A Guide to Working with the Moon, and it's a PDF that takes you through the signs of the zodiac and what the moon energy is good for when she's in each sign, right? And how that may feel, how we may experience that. And then there's also an MP3 that accompanies that talks more about the moon and her significance and that kind of thing. So if that's something that interests you, it's completely free. So just click the link below and you can head over to my website and get that for yourself. So what else is going on here? Well, yesterday we had Mars move into the sign of Scorpio. So I said it's all about Sagittarius, but we've still got some Scorpio stuff going on, definitely. And so with Mars in Scorpio, I touched on this last week, so I'm not going to go into detail here, but essentially this is a time where we can be really driven. That's that Mars energy, right? To get to the bottom of things. That's the Scorpio energy. And if we look at what's going on in the US with the impeachment hearings, that's a perfect example. So I think that with Mars and Scorpio, we're probably going to see it getting a little more intense in terms of a real driven urge to get, to uncover things. So that should be interesting. And we have Mercury that is stationing direct today. Hallelujah, right? It's been an interesting Mercury retrograde. I talked about that as well in past videos. But essentially, and I know some people have really had some difficulty navigating this transit. It always depends on where we're at, how we are relating to the energy, and of course, how it's impacting our personal chart, right? So how we will experience that. So the messages that we've been receiving, right, in sort of internal ways, right? Mercury has the ability to move between the worlds. And so when Mercury retrogrades, as you've heard me say before, it's an internalization of that energy. So Mercury's going internal, right, to get the messages kind of thing. And so those, whatever we've learned from this Mercury retrograde and whatever we've been working on and tweaking and that kind of thing, right? Now we start to see gradually the externalization of that, right? And manifest in the outside world. And things will begin to pick up momentum and communications can flow a little bit easier. Glitches that we've had maybe with electronics or just that kind of thing can smooth out at this time. So it doesn't happen overnight, but it does happen sort of gradually, build momentum from here. Then we have the sun entering Sagittarius on Friday, the 22nd. So happy birthday if you're a Sag sun sign. This is a significant time for you, this period, with and the new moon that's coming up that we're going to talk about in a few minutes here is your new moon. So it's really a good time to harness that energy. Aside from that, we have Venus entering Capricorn on Monday, the 25th. And when Venus moves into Capricorn, it's like the energy of Venus becomes more mature, more responsible, right? In our approach to love, relationships, beauty, money, that kind of thing. So that's what we can kind of expect to experience from that. And I mentioned the new moon in Sag. That's happening on the 26th, and we're going to get to that in a minute. But before we get there, there's something that I want to talk to you about that you may or may not have heard other astrologers mention, or if you follow me on Facebook, I posted something about it yesterday, and there's a link to an article from another astrologer, Adam Sommer, who is amazing. And it's just a short article, so if you're interested, you can go over to Facebook. The link to that is below, and check it out. And what I had to say about that as well. So, but the event I'm talking about is Jupiter, ruler of Sagittarius, who is about to move out of Sag, right? Jupiter has been transiting Sagittarius for about a year. That's how long Jupiter takes to transit a sign. And so Jupiter's nearing the end of his journey through Sagittarius and going to move into Capricorn, where he will join Pluto and Saturn and the South Node. And that's happening first week of December. I believe the date is the 6th of December. But before Jupiter moves out, he is meeting up with the Galactic Centre. So this energy is prevalent from sort of yesterday through to the 23rd. And it, as I always say, these events don't happen in like a split second, right? They reverberate out on either side. So, but the real window here is the 19th to the 23rd, 24th kind of thing. And what the heck is the Galactic Centre? Well, if you've never heard that before, the Galactic Centre is actually the center of our universe, right? It's in the Milky Way. We now know it's this, there's a big black hole in the Milky Way. That is the Galactic Center. It's the center of our universe. And it happens to fall, astrologically speaking, at 27 degrees of Sagittarius. Now, it does move very slowly, but it's at 27 Sag for a long time. So, it moves, in fact, 1 degree every 70 years. So 27 Sag, right? And it takes 70 years to get to 28 Sag. So it's at 27 Sag for our purposes. And so it's this place, this black hole, where science now has confirmed that it births stars and it swallows them, right? So there's kind of like this almost regeneration thing that goes on. And for me, like when I think about this, it makes me think of the idea of reincarnation. It makes me think of that it's like the birthplace of all souls. It's where all souls come from and return to. This is just, my thoughts. And it's also I don't know how many of you are familiar with the term Akashic Records, right? But it's kind of like the Akashic Records are thought to be the book of life. It's where all the information about us is recorded. Obviously, I don't mean literally, or imprinted, or contained in this energy, right? The Akashic Records. And that can be accessed in, in certain ways. And so it's like the center, that's sort of like the location of the Akashic Records, potentially. Again, my thoughts, right? But when the Galactic Center is triggered by a transit, and Jupiter is at home in Sagittarius, right? So this is really amplified. It's like we have access to those messages, to that information, to that, like we have a more open line of communication, if you will. And so Jupiter came within range of the Galactic Center back in April at about 25 degrees, but then it retrograded, right? So it hasn't hit until now. And Jupiter, you heard me say, Jupiter takes 12 months, roughly 12 to 13 months to move through a sign, which means it takes about 12 years to circle the zodiac, right? To get back to the sign that it was in. So every 12 years, Jupiter conjuncts the Galactic Center. So it's a rare event, but what makes this particular passing even more rare is the fact that Venus is right there too. That's a very rare event. Jupiter and Venus together on the Galactic Center. So as Jupiter and Venus trigger this point, it's like we have this opportunity for consciousness expansion, right? For perhaps awakening, for some realizations and insights that seem to just drop out of the blue, right? For even experiencing feelings of being connected to something larger than ourselves, and being able to kind of tap into the collective consciousness. So it's a pretty big deal. So it will be interesting for all of us to take note of what's happening for us over these next few days and see if we're noticing that in our own lives, right? Of course, if you're somebody who has specific planets and points in your own chart around that 27-degree mark, this might be familiar energy to you in some ways, but it's because you're born with that. But it's also being triggered for you now too. So, amped up even more. Jupiter expands whatever it touches, right? So this event, right, in Sagittarius, and the sun about to enter Sagittarius, the last new moon, as I mentioned, of the year in Sagittarius before the December 26th solar eclipse. Tons going on in Sagittarius. So, what I want to show you, first of all, I have actually two charts to show you today. So I'm going to show you one now and then one in a minute, because I'm going to launch into talking about Sag and more in the new moon. But this is the chart that shows the conjunction of Jupiter and Venus on the Galactic Center. So, which again is exact on the 23rd. There's Jupiter, right, at 27, Venus at 27 Sag. The sun will have moved into Sag, as I said, on the 22nd. So be in there too, shining a light on that Sagittarius energy in the chart, right? And then we have, of course, Pluto, Saturn, South Node, asteroid Ceres, whom I addressed last week, if you're interested in what the significance of that is, all in Capricorn. Mercury will have stationed, be moving direct, still in Scorpio, but direct, yay, at that time. There's Mars in Scorpio, right, entered Scorpio. And I think the rest I'll leave for the other chart. But what I really wanted to draw your attention to is this happening in Sag. So let's talk about Sagittarius for a few minutes, because this is Sag's time, right? So Sagittarius is a mutable fire energy. And I already mentioned to you that the ruler of Sagittarius is Jupiter. The key phrase for Sagittarius is I seek or I understand. Either of those is used. And Sag is the seeker, right? The seeker, the visionary, the adventurer, the optimist at heart, really. Sag is forever on this quest to gather new experiences and seek meaning ultimately and optimally, right? Sag, just, sort of on the day to day, can be the real life of the party and can, be very clever, very wise, very funny, very generous, very passionate, very dynamic, all of these things. Sagittarius energy does not like to be boxed in. It's really not good for Sag to be stagnant. They need to be moving. That energy needs to be moving and expanding constantly. And it sort of finds a way to do that, hopefully, in a positive way. But so, for example, my son, who is actually a Leo sun sign, but he's a Sagittarius rising and Sagittarius moon. He's got lots of Sag energy. I think I've mentioned this before. And he literally, he's constantly, if he's talking to you, he's moving. He's moving. So it's a little bit distracting for the person on the other end, and we work on that, with them. But it's kind of like it's a need that he has. It's innately something that he needs. He needs to move the energy. So, like I was saying, Sag is forever on this quest, right? And very focused on the bigger picture rather than the details. And this adventure-seeking nature can come through travel. It can come through, kind of constant learning and exploration, spiritual pursuits, or even, just engagement in other experiences, just constantly engaging in the world around it. So Sag gathers these experiences and goes on these adventures to sort of shape, and that shapes their worldview and their philosophy and their belief system, right? And then they have this need to share that with others. And so that can make for really quite, a very wise, knowledgeable, dynamic teacher. But it can also, on the shadow side, it can result in being more of like a preacher, preaching over teaching kind of thing, right? Would be the shadow side of it. So preaching, pontificating from the soapbox, right? Like I know the truth. This is the way it is. And, they don't really like to kind of have that challenged or hear what other people have to say. In some ways, Sagittarius is the bard, right? The storyteller. And it makes me think, this energy makes me think of the character in one of my favorite movies. One of my favorite characters in one of my favorite movies is the guy who plays Chaucer in A Knight's Tale. I can't remember the actor's name, but that character to me is very Sagittarian. So they have there's an innate ability to entertain people with Sag energy. And ethics often plays an important role as well in the life of a Sag. So, they can be really obsessed with justice and morals and this kind of thing. Or on the shadow side, there can be this sense of being untouchable and this kind of justification for their own unethical, actions. Sometimes that can happen too. And there can also be a lack of tact, right? Being quite blunt. Because in their mind, it's like, well, this is the truth, right? I know the truth. And they do know a lot, but not everything. So if Sag isn't learning and growing and expanding and sort of pushing the edges of their experience and their knowledge, right, then there can be this sense of being in the realm of the hungry ghost. I don't know if you've ever heard that term before, but never being satisfied. So consuming for the sake of consuming. So, it's like, just to give you an example, it would be like the Sag energy that's doing that is the person who is traveling for the sake of it, and kind of like, it's like a constant all-inclusive vacation, right? Where you're just going there to like eat and drink to excess, and there's not really any purpose aside from that. You're not learning anything from the culture. You're not going off resort to do anything. And there's this constant, like, that's what, the travel is for. So there's, as I said, there's this need for moving, right? Moving from kind of, there can be this moving from one thing to the other. And this constant sort of consumption for the sake of it, or adventuring for the sake of it, without really stopping to consider the deeper meaning, right? Because Sag ultimately really does want to get to the deeper meaning. So what we want to do is harness this energy, that sort of beautiful sense of optimism and an adventure that Sag is known for. We want to harness that to grow, to expand, right? Sagittarius and Jupiter in a meaningful way, and in the direction of our truth. If you think of Sagittarius as the symbol of the arrow, right? So let's talk more about the new moon. The new moon is at 4 degrees of Sagittarius, right? And Jupiter, Venus conjunct the Galactic Centre is at 27 degrees. So Sag from beginning to end is getting hit with some pretty significant energy. The new moon is what we call in a quincunx, 150-degree angle. It's sometimes also called an inconjunct to Uranus, which is at 3 degrees of Taurus. And all of that is directly opposite Mars and Scorpio, right? Taurus and Scorpio are opposite each other. So I'm going to show you now that chart, just briefly, for the new moon, which is happening on the 26th. So this is the chart for the new moon, where we have, there's Jupiter moved on, right? And Venus has moved on from her place in Sagittarius and moved into Capricorn at this point. But we have the moon and the sun conjunct. That's what always happens at a new moon. The sun and the moon come together to birth something new. It's about new beginnings, right? Initiating something new, fresh starts. So that's at 4 degrees Sag. And we have that, as I mentioned, a quincunx happening between that energy and the energy of Uranus, which is down here at 3 degrees Sag. And then, or 3 degrees, Taurus. And Uranus is opposite Mars. Mars is there at 4 degrees Scorpio, right? So these are sort of the significant things. Also, Chiron is here in Aries and loosely trining the new moon as well. So that's what I wanted to show you on that chart. Let's break it down a little bit. That inconjunct or quincunx that I was talking about between the new moon and Uranus in Taurus, it's like an irritation, an itch that you can't scratch. That's what a quincunx is, or an inconjunct. It's like trying to work out a deal between two parties who have really nothing in common. Like, they can't really see each other's point of view. They can't see where each other is coming from, right? And so we have to work with this energy in a way that's really compromising. We have to be aware. We have to keep an open mind, and look for solutions that may be a bit unconventional, and we have to do our best. If you're somebody that has a quincunx or a lot of them in your chart, I have several, you can be, kind of used to this. You get used to it over time, right? But it's being, this energy is being triggered. This kind of irritation is being triggered at the time of the new moon. And then the Mars opposite Uranus that's happening at the same time, this energy can be very electric, very explosive, right? Um, it's like two words that come to mind are impulsiveness, that would be the Mars piece, and shock, that would be the Uranus piece, right? We can feel really highly charged and very restless at this time, and have this need that, you know, we have to break free. We have to liberate ourselves from something. But this, I mean, that's fantastic in some ways, right? When you think about it, if we handle it appropriately. And so again, you know, keeping a level head, having awareness, the fact that you're listening to this video and you're interested and you have that awareness, right? You kind of have a leg up already to deal with this energy because you're hearing about it now. Rolling with the punches, right? It is really what we need to do at this time. We may have to really think on our feet because things can be changing quite quickly at this time. You know, and not lose our cool if the winds of change blow in, sort of thing. It's not a time to go on the attack under this Mars Uranus opposition. You know, keep breathing, stay grounded through this energy, and if there's chaos swirling around you, be the eye of the storm, right? Don't engage in the potential kind of explosive, you know, coming to blows sort of thing. You know, outbursts out of frustration are not advisable at this time. I mean, they're never advisable, but especially at this time, right? But there is a huge opportunity. Like, that's some things we need to keep in mind, right? So that we can utilize this energy most optimally, and that there is this huge opportunity for expansion, for growth, for new beginnings, new moon, for insight, for that tapping into the collective consciousness and retrieving some significant information to help us move forward. So the area of our charts that contains Sagittarius is really getting hit, right? A lot of action throughout this week and as we move into December. And ultimately, it's quite beautiful. You know, I'm a realist in many ways, right? I have that, as I've said to you before, that one foot on either side. I have a lot of faith, Pisces Sun, a lot of optimism in many ways, but also very grounded, feet on the earth. You know, Virgo rising, Scorpio moon. So I want to tell you about all the good things, and there are a lot of good things, but I also want to keep you abreast of some potential for, you know, a little bit of irritation and maybe having to deal with some frustrating energy or frustrating, you know, experiences. But ultimately, there are blessings available to us. And as I said on Facebook yesterday, sometimes we don't always recognize a blessing, right? Sometimes blessings come in disguise. So keep your eyes and ears open. Keep, you know, yourself tuned in, and take a look at what things you may be experiencing that are blessings you may not be recognizing, blessings that come in disguise, opportunities that you are being nudged to take. Really trust your instincts, right, at this time, and follow that nudging from your higher self, even if it doesn't always make sense. You know, I'm never one to say take like foolish risks. I'm not going to tell you to do that. But sometimes we have to just trust ourselves, trust our instincts, trust that that nudge is leading us somewhere we are supposed to be. So here's what you can expect briefly, you know, to experience in terms of the area of your chart that this is hitting, right? Most notably, which is the Sag area of your chart. And this is based on rising sign, first and foremost, but also listen for your sun sign and your moon sign. And that will give you a more complete picture. This is a general forecast. I'll remind you, it's not the same as having your own personal birth chart read and looked at. It's a general forecast, but anyone with significant Sagittarius energy is really likely to feel this. And especially if you've got energy, the new moon energy is being felt around that 4-degree mark, give or take, and the Jupiter Venus on the Galactic Centre around the 27-degree mark, give or take. And then the other mutable signs may also feel it quite strongly: Gemini, Virgo, and Pisces. But everybody, will feel this in some way, in some area of their lives. And that relates to the house that this is all happening in. So let's get to that. So we'll go through the signs beginning with Sagittarius, and I'll just touch on the house that all of this energy is happening for you. It's essential in this particular circumstance, especially, to listen to the intro, right? Again, I don't have time to go through everything for each sign. So that's why I give you that introduction, the real crux of everything, and then I let you know this is the area of life you're likely to experience this in. So Sagittarius, this is happening in your first house, all of this energy. So this is a real, it's like a rebirth for you, right? I've said before, when energy enters the first house, it's a new beginning. And because we have a new moon in your sign, that speaks to new beginnings as well. And so this is a real new beginning for you, Sag. Something you can be quite optimistic about, in your true nature. You may be embarking on some kind of new adventure, new journey, new phase of your life, right? Next leg of the journey kind of thing. And so the first house relates to the self and all that encompasses, particularly your physical being. It relates to how you put yourself out there in the world, how you are seen out in the world, how you are perceived, how you approach the world, what your instinctual approach to the world is. And so this is really like a rebirth in many ways for you, Sag. So really take some time to think about how you want to use this energy to set your intentions for this next phase, and what you want to learn and what you want to experience and the meaning that you're looking for. So I'm going to leave that there for you, Sag, and move on to Scorpio, where we have all of this happening, the new moon and the Venus, Jupiter on the Galactic Centre, Sun entering Sag, all in your second house, Scorpio. So there is a hit of freshness being injected into your second house of your values, what you value, your material belongings, including money, your worth, your self-worth, right? And so all of this is under the influence of this Sagittarian energy, this optimistic, fiery, adventurous, wisdom-seeking, meaning-seeking energy of Sagittarius. And so set your new intentions for this new moon around those second house themes that I just spoke to you about, okay? So that's for you, Scorpio. Moving on to Libra now, where we've got the new moon and Jupiter, Venus conjunct the Galactic Centre happening in your third house, Libra. So this is where that hit of Sagittarius energy is coming through for you, right? The optimism, the adventure, the exploration, the expansion, the abundance, all of this that Sagittarius can bring in the house of communications, of your immediate environment. So who you interact with on the day-to-day and how, right? Speaking, writing, messages exchanged back and forth, conversations with people in your immediate environment. So your siblings, your cousins, your neighbors, your peers, all of this, right? Your self-talk as well. So Libra, this is where Sag is really, coming through for you at this time, that energy that we spoke about. And so this is where you want to focus, your intentions around this time. So that's for you, Libra. Moving on to Virgo, where we've got the Sagittarius new moon happening in your 4th house, along with Jupiter, Venus on the Galactic Center. So Virgo, this is an opportunity for growth, expansion, abundance, optimism, a fresh start, new adventures in your house of home and family and your roots and your ancestry and your connection to women and mother figures, those nurturing energies in your life, your tribe, right? Your family, your place of living, your actual place of living. And so, Virgo, this is the area of life you want to set your new moon intentions on, and you want to ask perhaps for some guidance around at this time. So that's for you, Virgo. Don't forget to listen to the intro, right? For all the goods kind of thing. Moving on to Leo now, where we've got the new moon in Sag and Jupiter, Venus on the Galactic Center in your 5th house, Leo. So Leo, for you, this is, Sagittarius is a fellow fire sign. You're used to that fiery energy. Sagittarius is this energy of seeking meaning and going on adventure and being optimistic and, exploring the world kind of thing. And for you, all of this is happening in the house of children and your inner child and your creative self-expression. And what sparks joy for you, right? What brings you pleasure in this life? And so there's this hit of all that awesome Sagittarius energy happening for you. And so what I advise is that those 5th house themes are what you should set your new moon intentions around, as all of this energy is coming into play. So that's for you, Leo. Moving on to Cancer, where we've got the new moon and Jupiter, Venus on the Galactic Center in your 6th house, Cancer. And that's the house of the daily grind, right? Your day-to-day tasks, paid or unpaid, your routines and habits, including health, and how you are in service. And so for you, Cancer, this is where this hit of Sagittarius is happening for you, right? This opportunity for something new. It's a new moon to come in at this time and to get some deep, profound insight there as well. So when you are setting your new moon intentions and when you are thinking about that, focus them on this 6th house, right? And Sagittarius wants to bring you some new adventures there, some a new sense of meaning and learning and expansion and abundance in that area of life for you. So that's for you, Cancer. Moving on to Gemini now, where we've got the new moon and Jupiter, Venus on the Galactic Center in your 7th house of one-to-one relationships, right? Significant relationships in your life. And so this is a time where, Sagittarius is bringing in this optimism, this call to adventure, this sense of deeper meaning, and wanting to explore in terms of your close personal relationships, right? Those relationships you have that are with a significant other, close friends, close family members, business partners, this kind of thing, right? And so when you're setting your new moon intentions, Gemini, set them around those 7th house themes, right? And you'll have that support of Sagittarius there for you. So that's what's going on for you. And we're moving on to Taurus now, where we have the new moon in the 8th house and Jupiter conjunct Venus on the Galactic Center in the 8th house for you, Taurus. So there is a call to adventure, right? In terms of your intimate connections with others, your shared resources, right? So those resources, money, time, energy that you share with others in a deep way, in a vulnerable way, right? This includes things like taxes, insurance, bursaries, wills, all of this kind of thing, money that comes in from other people. And also your deep psyche, right? What's sort of buried down there, and psychological healing, hidden knowledge, this kind of thing is eighth house as well. And so there's a opportunity for a fresh start here for you. This is the area of life to set your new moon intentions around. And Sagittarius is there to support you with that. All right, next we have Aries, where we have the new moon and Venus conjunct Jupiter happening in your ninth house, Aries. So this new moon is an opportunity for a fresh start in terms of higher education, teaching, learning, your beliefs, philosophies, worldview, your own call to adventure. Ninth house is the house of Sagittarius, right? So this can be long distance travel, connection with foreign cultures. And so Aries, these ninth house themes are where you will ideally set your new moon intentions. And then that optimistic, adventurous, search for meaning, Sagittarius energy is there to support you with that, right? So that's for you, Aries. Moving on to Pisces, where we've got the new moon and Venus conjunct the Galactic Centre happening in your 10th house, Pisces, a very visible house, right? The top of your chart, the house of our worldly ambitions, the legacy we wish to leave, our career, our public reputation and persona and status, our relationship to authority and authoritarian figures, or our own authority. So Pisces, Sagittarius, all the Sagittarius is calling you on an adventure in this area of your chart, right? And it's time for something new here. So this is the area to set your new moon intentions on, all of those 10th house themes. So I'll leave it at that for you, Pisces, and we'll move on to Aquarius now, where we have the new moon happening and Venus conjunct the Galactic Centre in your 11th house, Aquarius. This is your home house. Aquarius is at home in the 11th. And so this is a time for new beginnings in this area of life. And what does that speak to? 11th house is the people that you are walking on the same path as. Friendship groups, associations, clubs, organizations, networks, people you connect with online. There's this sense of getting your word out to a bigger audience. There is, this is the house of hopes and dreams and the people that can help you achieve those, right? And so Sagittarius, all the Sagittarius energy is offering you a fresh start here. Optimism, a call to adventure in this area of your chart. So set your new moon intentions around those 11th house themes, Aquarius. And last but not least, we have Capricorn, where we've got the new moon and Venus conjunct the Galactic Centre happening for you in your 12th house, right? Which is a very behind closed doors house. The 12th house speaks to how we spend time in solitude, rest, relaxation, recuperation, rehabilitation, all of these things. It is the house of our dreams and our connection to the unseen. It has been known in ancient times as the house of our undoing because it can speak to those self-sabotaging habits that we may have, right? Things like addictions. And it relates to places that are closed off from the outside world as well. So hospitals, prisons, ashrams, retreat centers, rehabilitation centers, these kinds of things. And so Capricorn, for you, the Sagittarius energy, the new moon and the Jupiter Venus on the Galactic Centre piece are offering you this fresh start in this area in some way, right? Set your new moon intentions around these themes. And that energy, harness that Sagittarius energy of a call to adventure in this area of life, optimism, seeking meaning, right? These are all optimally what Sagittarius represents. So That's for you, Capricorn, and that is all 12 signs. For all of us, and I didn't really say this at the beginning, but if you stuck it out this long, then I'll say it now. It is this call to an adventure, to a pilgrimage of sorts, right? In whatever area of life, whatever house this energy is hitting. So, new moon blessings to everyone, and enjoy this beautiful energy of Venus and Jupiter on the Galactic Center. And I will talk to you next Wednesday. All right. Take good care. Bye bye.